Good morning, children. Welcome to today's social session. Children, after listening to the ocean and fishing, we are going to move towards a history part where we introduce you about the new kings and kingdoms. Many new dynasties have emerged after the 7th century. You can go through the map number 1 in page number 101 in the textbook, where you can find the new kingdoms which have arisen. That shows a major ruling dynasties in different parts of the subcontinent between the 7th and 12th centuries. So now I am going to introduce you regarding the new kingdoms and new kings who ruled between the 7th to 12th century. It was by the 7th century there were many influential landlords or warrior chiefs were present in different regions of the subcontinent. Existing kings often acknowledged them as their subordinates, or we call them as Samantas. You might have seen even in Bahubali, there are many Samantas, isn't it? So they were expected to bring gifts for their kings or overlords during the occasions, and even they will be present at their court and provide them with their military support. As Samantas gained power and wealth, what happened? They declared themselves to be the Mahasamanta or Mahamandaleshwara and the great lord of a circle. So they are called as a Mahasamanta. Samanta is nothing but subordinate king. Okay, Mahasamanta or Mahamandaleshwara they are called as. So he is a great lord of a circle or a region, and so on. Sometimes they even asserted their independence from their overlords, and one such instance was that of the Rashtrakutas in the Deccan. Initially, these Rashtrakutas were the subordinates of the Chalukyas of Karnataka. So we are going to discuss about the Rashtrakutas. These are actually subordinates of Chalukyas of Karnataka. So in the mid 8th century, it was Dantidurga, a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew his Chalukya overlord and performed a ritual called as Hiranyagarbha, and literally Hiranyagarbha means golden womb. This ritual was performed with the help of Brahmins, and it was thought to lead to the rebirth of the sacrifice as a Kshatriya, even if he was not a Kshatriya by birth. So in other cases, men from an enterprise family, even from a Vaishya family, also used their military skills in order to carry out, in order to capture or carry out kingdoms. For instance, the people like Kadamba Mayuru Ashraman and the Gurjara Pratiharas Harichandra were Brahmins who gave their traditional professions and took up the arms, successfully establishing kingdoms in Karnataka and Rajasthan respectively. Gurjara Pratiharas are also of Brahmin class, but later they became the warriors and they became the kings. It was a feeling that only Kshatriyas should rule the country or the kingdom. Now coming to the Prashastis or the land grants. Prashastis. What are these Prashastis? So the invocation part of an inscription is called as a Prashasti. Prashastis generally contain details about the ruling family, such as their predecessors and the period to which they belong to. So in most of the excavations, they also contain exaggregated. Exaggregated means telling more than what is present. So it carries exaggregated accounts of the rulers and their achievements, but they tell us about how rulers wanted to depict themselves as. So for example, valiant, victorious warriors, these were composed by learned Brahmins who occasionally helped in the administration along with the king. So there is a Nagabhatta Prashasti. I will tell you what is written in this Prashasti. This Prashasti was written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior of Madhya Pradesh. It describes the exploits of Nagabhatta, a Pratihara king, a Gurjara Pratihara king, the king of Andhra, Sindhva, that means Sindh, Vidarbha, part of Maharashtra, and Kalinga, part of Odisha, fell before him. Even as a prince, he won a war over Chakrayuddha, the ruler of Kanauj, he defeated the king of Vanga, that is a part of Bengal, Anartha, the part of Gujarat, and Malwa, the part of Madhya Pradesh. Kirata, the forest people, and Turkish, that is Turks, Vatsa and Matsya, both kingdoms located in the North India. So kings after he was even they rewarded him by grants of land for making a prashasti. They were recorded on copper plates which were given to those who received the land. So it was in the 12th century, a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of kings who ruled over Kashmir was composed by a author named called as Kalhana. You remember a great poet Kalhana? He is the author of the book Raja Tarangini, Kalhana. So he wrote a long prashasti about the Kashmiri kings, which include the inscriptions, documents, eyewitness accounts, and earlier histories to write his account. Unlike the writers of prashasti, he was often critical about the rulers and their policies. He was not exaggerating, but he used to tell what is originally present. So the remaining kings, when administration, if you look at the administration of the kingdoms, many of these new kings adopted high sounding titles such as Rajadi Raja, Maharaja, Sri Sri Sri, okay, Tribhuvana Chakravarti, the Lord of three kingdoms. So these are some of the what we call high titles which are adopted by them. However, in spite of such claims, they often shared power with their Samantas as well, with the association of the peasants, with the association of traders, and even with the Brahmins. And in each of these kingdoms, resources were obtained from the producers, that is peasant, cattle keepers, and artisans, who were often persuaded or compelled to surrender a part of their produced thing. They have to pay it in the form of tax, that is through which the entire administration runs. Sometimes they were claimed as rent due to a lord who asserted that he owned the land. Revenue was also collected from the traders. These resources were used to finance the king's establishment and in the construction of the palaces and king's residences, and even for the construction of the villages, and even for the making warfare, and as well as for the constructing temples and forts. These finances were used. They were also used to fight the wars, and which were in turn expected to lead to the acquisition of wealth from the another kingdom in the form of plunder and access to land, as well as to the trade routes. The functionaries for collecting revenue were generally recruited from the influential families of the king, and positions were often hereditary. If the father has gone, his son used to occupy that position. It was hereditary. Even after you, your son take up, and after him, his son takes up. It is called as hereditary. Most of the positions in the revenue were hereditary. This was true about the army as well. In many cases, close relatives of the king held the high positions. So this is how he took up, and you may have noticed that each of these ruling dynasties was based in a specific region, and at the same time they tried to control over other areas also with the help of the Samantas. One particular prince area was a prized area was the Kanauj in the Ganga valley. For centuries, the rulers belonging to the Gurjara Pratihara, Rashtrakuta, and even Palas, these three dynasties fought for the control over Kanauj, as there were called as three parties, as there were three parties in this kingdom. In this dispute drawn, conflicting historians often described it as a tripartite struggle. Tri means three. So because three parties are involved in this struggle, it was called as a tripartite struggle. So why they were so eager to capture Kanauj? Kanauj is a minerally rich place, so they wanted the control over the Kanauj in order to have the resources like iron, through which they can get a very qualitative swords and other weapons. So this is about the warfare for the wealth. So now let us see about Muhammad of Ghazni. Have you heard? Not Ghazni film I am talking about, children. I am talking about Muhammad Ghazni. One of the rulers called as Sultan Muhammad Ghazni, Afghanistan, ruled from 997 AD to 1030 AD. He is nothing but Sultan Muhammad Ghazni. So, and he extended control over parts of Central Asia, Iran and northwestern part of the south subcontinent. He raided the subcontinent almost every year. Every year he used to raid, and he used to target wealthy temples and take away all the wealth. He used to loot the wealth, and this also included, that was in Gujarat, Somnath temple was also looted by this fellow. Much of the wealth that Muhammad carried away was used to create a splendid capital city at Ghazni. So Sultan Muhammad was also interested in finding out more about the people whom he conquered, and entrusted a scholar called as Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni. So, to write an account of the subcontinent, this Arabic work known as Kitab al-Hind is an important work composed by this historian Al-Biruni with the help of Sultan Muhammad. And Al-Biruni consulted Sanskrit scholars also to prepare this account. Coming to the Chahmanas, or whom we call it as Chauhans, one of the famous Chauhan king is Prithviraj Chauhan. So, Chahmanas, later known as the Chauhans, ruled over the region of Delhi and Ajmer, the present day Delhi and Ajmer, that are the parts of Rajasthan and the northern India. He attempted to expand their control to the west as well as to the east, where they were opposed by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and Gandhawalas of western Uttar Pradesh. The best known Chahmana king ruler was Prithviraja III. He ruled between 1168 AD to 1192 AD. 1168 to 1192 AD. This is the period of Prithviraja III. So he is one of the well-known ruler of Chauhan dynasty or Chauhans. So Prithviraj, who defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191 AD. Ghori was defeated in the hands of Prithviraj Chauhan. So it was in 1191 AD, but the next year in 1192 AD, he was lost to him itself. Ghori again defeated him in the next year. So this is about the new kings and kingdoms. In the part 2, we shall read about the Cholas. Thank you, children.